Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. My name is Sophia Aaron, and I'm the Global Blockchain Business Council's Director of Communications. So for the last year, the GBBC and our extraordinary network of members and partners around the world have collaborated to release the Global Standards Mapping Initiative version 2.0, also known as GSMI 2.0. So this incredible body of work represents countless hours and is the most comprehensive effort to map and analyze the blockchain and digital asset ecosystem across several key areas. Today's roundtable is really designed to provide an introduction to the GSMI 2.0, what it is, why it's important, and some of the key insights and recommendations garnered from this research initiative. This is our second roundtable that we've hosted today during APAC-friendly hours, and it will also be recorded and shared. We will begin today's discussion with a brief introduction of GSMI 2.0 by Paul Rapino, GBBC's Chief Growth Officer, and then dive into overviews of several key sections of the GSMI as led by the industry leaders who have joined us here today and are seen in the graphic. So please feel free to ask questions if you're dialing in live, and we will address them at the end. You can also reference the GSMI 2.0 website and agenda, which I'll drop into the chat. Thanks so much to everyone, and I'll hand things off to Paul to begin.
So if you're not familiar, I wanted to walk you through what GSMI is. It's the Global Standards Mapping Initiative, and our goal when we started 1.0 was to map the initiatives in the most comprehensive way possible to give a clear understanding of what's actually happening in the digital asset landscape. So we looked at 5 key areas to have a really thoughtful approach or a viewpoint that could be in the an open source view of the marketplace. And that was legislation and regulatory guidance, technical standards, industry standards, and also recommendations around those. This year we looked at universities. More and more universities are offering courses, programs, or degrees in blockchain or kind of emerging technology or fintech related to blockchain, and also degrees in that. And then at the consortia, so there are several groups out there, and one of the goals of GBBC generally is to unite or organize the various groups that are out there. So the GSMI, when you look at it, the reason to look at it is if you want to go deep on several of these verticals. So there are 9 working groups that we pulled together. Over 200 of you or your colleagues or coworkers participated. And those vertical teams included taxonomy, the digital asset and crypto regulation. We looked at policy, big topic this year, digital ID did. Technical, we looked at the green economy, what that actually means. Global taxation, derivatives, and we did a deep dive on South Korea. So insights came from over 87 jurisdictions, so kind of vertical or regional insights at that level. And we looked also for crypto and digital asset regulations. Also, last year we started mapping technical standards and trying to make a basic taxonomy of what those technical standards are, so there's clarity across boards. And we, in this case, looked at 38 different standards, which are also mapped out in the GSMI report. We also had another list of taxonomy terms. So what do basic things mean? And we're really early in this stage still, so we wanted to invest a lot of time into making sure that the taxonomy was consistent. And when people said, tokenization, we were really clear on what was meant. This year, and I worked with them, and all of our working groups did, we added 12 fellows from 7 academic institutions on an 8-month fellowship. And that was really fun to work with them and get their perspective, their insights. Many of them were working in in crypto or blockchain or digital asset companies, and also getting their degree. So we got some real good insights and support on the research and also additional work on each of these projects. We worked with the Blockchain Education Network to map the universities, and that was really insightful to just see the number of programs across the world and what degrees. Many of them are obviously in engineering or computer science. We also saw a lot in the business side and also in the regulatory programs. So just a couple of data points and the reason we show this is just we want to show the breadth and the depth of the work. Like I said, 187 jurisdictions. We worked with 479 consortia. Like I said, technical standards, 38 different standards, 389 courses, and 10 supranationals. So this is a big list. We will not take a lot of time to go through it, but over 200 companies and contributors from 131 organizations. And keep everybody happy, we listed them all here in the fine print, but this is more than fine print. I'll be back in a little bit to talk about the green economy, and it was a lot of fun working in that, but it was important to have a broad sense of who's involved. As I mentioned, our technical fellows, these are the universities from across the world, and they were very instrumental in helping us move the project forward. What I want to do now is just walk you through a little bit real quickly through the site to give you an idea of what's actually out there. So let me get that up here. So if you log on to gbbcouncil.org, you'll go to the header here and you'll see GSMI. You'll click on that and you'll get this beautiful page, which is the headline for the Global Standards Mapping Initiative. These are the 5 sections that are broken down. It's broken into, and then it's easily digestible. The executive summary is worth downloading and checking it out just to have a good idea. When somebody asks you a question or you're working on a project, you'll probably find a good starting point in the executive summary. More details around the project are in the announcements, and then the report is actually listed right here. You can download it from there. A really cool feature to help you target into to the material is this interactive map. So let's look at Australia. You can see what's listed here. Very cool feature. So you're not actually going into an appendix. You're able to go right, drill right into the region and find out what's there. And you'll see the breadth of it. It's really amazing that we were able to go so broadly and dig into the different initiatives or the opportunities that are out there. So take a look at that. And again, the report is at gbbcouncil.org, and it's under our GSMI header. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, and we'll drill into several of our speakers. Thank you all again for attending today's roundtable.
Thanks so much, Paul, for that introduction. I'll hand things over to Marieke van Cleef. She's product development lead at Equinix, and she contributed heavily to the derivatives section of the report. Over to you.
Thanks, Sophia. Whilst I get my slides up, good morning, everyone. Very, very happy to be here, or good evening, depending where you are. So yeah, as Sophia said, I worked on the derivatives part of the GSMI 2.0. And I just want to start with giving you a bit of an introduction of what we actually did. So obviously the derivatives market has been growing quite rapidly over the past few years. And we can definitely say that institutional adoption of crypto derivatives is on the way. So it's been a great opportunity to take stock of where we are at today And what the derivatives working group really did is outline the types of crypto derivatives and structured products, trading volumes, and crypto derivative regulation in 12 jurisdictions. Now, what makes the crypto space quite interesting is that we have lots of native crypto people that not necessarily familiar with all the ins and outs of derivatives. And at the same time, we have a lot of people coming in from traditional finance that are very familiar with derivatives, but don't necessarily know how crypto derivatives work and where they are different. So what the derivatives group has done is give a concise introduction to derivative products and their uses for those people that may not have all the knowledge yet. And at the same time, we've also detailed key elements and evolution of derivative products in the digital asset space. So when you go through the report, you'll see that there are many similarities to traditional derivative products. Lots of the products work in a very similar way, and they're just very familiar with what you know from traditional finance. But there are also some differences. And one of the things is, for example, there are some new contracts that we've not really seen before in traditional finance, like the perpetual future, which is hugely popular in the crypto space. But there are also some terms that you may know from traditional finance, but that actually have a different meaning in crypto. And one of those terms, which I like as an example, is leverage. Because when people think about leverage coming from traditional finance, especially combined with the crypto space, they think, oh, it's quite like the crypto space is so volatile. Why do you need more leverage? And they think about leverage as if you're underlying, like Bitcoin goes up by 1%. If you're 5 times leverage, your returns will be 5%. But in crypto, actually, when we talk about leverage, it's more about margin trading. So if Bitcoin goes up 1% and your derivative contract is 5 times leverage, your return is still only 1%, but you only need to fund 5% of your notional. And so, or 1/5, so 20% of your notional. And that really is very important difference to understand. At the same time, we also talk about some of the innovation in the crypto space, such as auto liquidation instead of centralized clearing. In traditional finance, when we trade derivatives, we like centralized clearing because it takes away some of your counterparty risk. But in crypto, obviously, that doesn't really exist, and it's probably not really necessary because we have this auto liquidation principle where people already get liquidated before they run out of money instead of asking for a margin call after the market has moved. So what the report describes is how we can consider some of this technology and how we can leverage this to create a next generation futures trading and clearing model. Now, if we look at the products in the crypto space, and if you look at the graph on the top right here, we see that the volume of crypto derivatives has really increased. The trading volume has really increased over the past year. And it's really interesting to see that actually one of the main products traded in the crypto space is the perpetual future. Obviously, one of the reasons people like it is because you can trade it on leverage. So you only need to fund part of your notional trades, and therefore with the same amount of capital, you can trade a lot more of this future compared to what you could trade for the spot. We also see quite some dated futures in the space. I think it's probably the second most traded product. And for options, we're seeing some exchanges that offer it, but it's really still like a very young market, and it's still growing quite a lot. In terms of assets on which we see crypto derivatives, it's mainly Bitcoin. As you can see on the bottom right graph, the percentage share of futures volumes of BTC versus Ethereum. So it's dominated by Bitcoin, but we are seeing a rise in crypto derivatives on altcoins. Then the final thing I want to touch upon today is the challenges that we see in crypto derivatives. And one of the things is if you trade equities, for example, whether you trade in London, Hong Kong, New York, you kind of know how it works. It will be very similar between the different venues. In crypto, even though there's only a small number of exchanges that account for most of the total market share, there are actually some significant differences between those exchanges when you're going to trade it. So you really need to know how the contracts work. So for example, in terms of contract types, we have linear versus inverse futures. And linear means that your P&L and your margin is all calculated in USD or a USD-based stablecoin. But inverse futures, it works the other way around. So your margin and your P&L will be, for example, in Bitcoin. And similarly, we see contract labeling and specification, which is different also between different exchanges. So some exchanges may denominate their contracts in USD or USD-based stablecoin, whereas others may say that contract size is in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever is the underlying. And in terms of labeling, it's also not exactly the same. And then finally, API formatting. So a lot of users use API when they trade crypto. And this is very different between different venues as well, or it can be very different. So to trade a crypto derivative on a venue, you need to really go and look and see, okay, how does it work here? And one of the recommendations from the GSMI 2.0 derivatives working group is that it would be great to see a bit more standardization between these different venues. Then the other part is regulation. So I think we can all agree that we do need to see more regulation in this industry. And we would like to see this also to allow investors access to this industry without having to worry about the degree of investor protection or regulatory oversight that they are used to. So the majority of crypto exchanges where you can trade crypto is unregulated. Obviously, you can trade crypto on CME, but it's closed on the weekends and overnight. So when you have an event like we just had this weekend where crypto just moves quickly down in this case, but even up, you can't get in, you can't get out, you can't profit from anything that happens when the exchange is closed. So what the working group has provided also is regulatory mapping report, which provides key insight into derivative specific regulation across 12 key jurisdictions. And it's just a really good way to see where all these jurisdictions are at and where we're at today. And for me, that wraps it up today.
Thanks so much, Marike. We'll now turn things over to Ki-bae Kim. He's principal researcher at KAIST, and he'll give an overview of the South Korea section of the report, which also had its own standalone report. And I should mention derivatives did too. So I'll drop both those links into the chat. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Ki-bae.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction, Sophia. So I will share my screen now then. Where is the screen? Okay, yeah. So hello everyone again. So yeah, thank you again for your invitation on behalf of South Korea Working Group's members. So here I'd like to overview our working group's findings. For example, yeah. So South Korea started its industrialization from the ruins after the Korean War in 1950. The street at the center of Seoul had nothing except people. You can see at the center of the slide. So, so we exported labor, and you can see here the miners in Germany. We exported. Sorry, so I'm sorry that I expressed the export, but so we had really nothing except people. So, and as the world to help us build advanced education, like KAIST was built by the official development assistance of the USA. Now Korea leads the world's brilliance, inspiration, and enthusiasm here. So you can see the same street is built with people who are enthusiastic in 2002 for the World Cup. So, but South Korea faces challenges to adopting blockchain. First, three challenges. First, the blockchain is vague, whether it is finance or industry. Actually, it is both. But the government should distinguish them to regulate finance and promote the industry. Responding to the Bitcoin shock in 2017, the government separated virtual assets from technologies and assigned virtual assets to the Finance Services Commission and technology to the Ministry of Science and ICT and businesses to the Ministry of SMEs and startups. South Korea has not announced any policy suppressing virtual assets, but the Finance Services Commission is the authority supervising the finance. So maybe industries and businessmen are enough to feel the South Korea is suppressing, but we have no policy about the virtual asset suppressing. So it is so now so the Financial Services Commission is the authority supervising the finance. Yes, it is reluctant to invade MSIT's Ministry of Science and ICT's R&D and MSS's industrial promotion. So the MSIT and the MSS don't also have an incentive to increase the realm of FSC's interested virtual assets. Therefore, the innovation of virtual assets is out of FSC, MSIT, and FSS's interest all. So the second one is about the blockchain's property about platform. So blockchain builds on a business ecosystem by nature as a platform. The Ministry of Science and ICT announced the 7 pillars to transform by blockchain, including financial services, real estate transactions, and renewable energy. But you should think that South Korea is more familiar with contributing products and services to a global platform than leading a platform. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix supply 70% of memory semiconductors in 2017, the first quarter of 2017, but they don't design a platform like Google, Intel, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. For example, Cyworld was launched by SK. SK merged it actually, but it tried to advance to the world, but it dominated as it was a dominant SNS platform in South Korea in the 2000s, and it tried to advance to the world when Facebook dominated the global market, but it failed because of the cultural difference between the world and South Korea. So we have little experience in platform strategies. So South Korea needs careful strategies to make their platform sustainable after the stop of the government fund, especially in blockchain infrastructure. Third, blockchain crosses over domains that industries and governments specialize in. For example, the Korea Disease Control and Preventing Agency launched in April 2021, COOV, the first blockchain-based vaccine certification system globally. Vaccine history is a primary service of the MSIT and DID Alliance. They build a cooperation relationship to develop a DID platform. But the KDCA has little incentive to provide its vaccination information to the MSIT in the condition of its vaccine certification system. So because they have already, the game, but we have to think that the game continues. Suppose COOV extends its services to financial domains and migration services as blockchain is a platform. So it doesn't stop at just a certification, but it continues to all the services around blockchain or any information. So in the case the KCDC Korea Disease Control needs cooperation with the MSIT for the information security management system certification. So the ISMS is so all enterprises have to need this certification to provide their digital services in South Korea. But if the MSIT's agency doesn't allow the IS certificate curve, KC disease curve, but in their ISMS, then yes, so maybe they will face with some challenges in their businesses in the Korean market. So they need they need really cooperation, but the bad relationship at the beginning, because of the separation of their roles, might prevent from them from collaborating for blockchain platform. So we highlighted 3 points of the blockchain in South Korea's adoption, but South Korea has developed thanks to the International Society's Official Development Assistance, ODA. So through the 70 years of industrialization, Koreans like me are well trained to work hard and catch up with the first movers. However, it is embarrassed that South Korea is really embarrassed that blockchain because there is no leader to follow. So because blockchain brings new behaviors, organizations, and institutions. So South Korea has asked so frequently, like that. Where's the leader to catch up? Where should they go? So, but in my opinion, they were wrong questions. So instead, because there's no first movers, you should ask like that. What have we piled up so far? How would we like to draw up by ourselves? So those are the messages of South Korea to the world. Building an active, brilliant, compliant, decentralized ecosystem like bibimbap. So I like the food. I like so much. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kibe. Appreciate that. And for everyone, you can find the link to the South Korea standalone report. GBBC also has had the pleasure to work with Kibe and the team at KAIST on research related to the travel rule. Rachel, I'll hand things over to you. Rachel is the head of marketing and communications at the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. They contributed to the policy working group and section of the report. Thanks so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Paul, and the GBBC team for inviting me to speak today on behalf of the policy working group. Our group of more than a dozen representatives from different companies and blockchain projects around the world work together to examine the current state of crypto regulation globally in hopes of charting a path forward for its success. At the outset of this project, we aim to address 4 key questions. The first is, how are cross-border issues developing? Second is, which countries and organizations are working to fix and address these issues? The main problems that these cross-border issues create, and finally, how regulators can begin to tackle these issues. Our group looked at everything from AML, anti-money laundering, KYC and counter-terrorist financing, to CBDCs, environmental impacts, and market manipulation. And the idea behind this work is that blockchain is fundamentally a borderless technology that exists in a world with many borders, and that this is a tension that requires thoughtful policy decision-making by governments. So the big idea in our section of the report is that governments need to find a way to work together, facilitated through international bodies, to minimize frictions that stand to hamper blockchain technology's potential. And here are a few key takeaways from our research, and then I will point you to the report. One is that while some governments have become more receptive to virtual and cryptocurrencies, others have yet to develop any rules or guidelines, and still others are charting paths towards hyper-regulation. And this lack of clarity in the marketplace has made accepting virtual currencies for cross-border payments difficult because their work still involves risk under some laws. Their use still involves risks under some laws. Second, it's unclear how and whether enforcement authorities would apply these laws to cryptocurrencies. So looking ahead, our research found that it will be important as regulation moves forward to really understand how cryptocurrencies are used and by whom. And there are some technologies in development that offer zero knowledge proof solutions for AML and KYC compliance. And these systems they're able to protect personal information without having to sacrifice safety and functionality. These and other RegTech offerings leverage the security and verifiability of blockchain technology, and they offer regulators some assurance that bad actors aren't using decentralized systems for the wrong reasons. As next steps, our group will continue to keep a close eye on country by country rules as they develop and monitor the growth of RegTech offerings that could help mitigate concerns and unlock the true potential of blockchains and cryptocurrencies. But I really do encourage you to head over to the report for a deeper exploration of the policy issues of the day. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Rachel, for your contributions, and definitely encourage you all to visit the policy section of the report, as well as the interactive map of blockchain guidance and regulation. We'll now turn our attention to the technical working group, which was co-chaired by Tracy Kurt, Associate Director for Blockchain and Multi-Party Systems Architecture at Accenture. And we'll also hear from Erica Lau. She is Head of Marketing at Red Date Technology. Thanks so much, Erica and Tracy. I'll hand things over to you.
All right, thank you. Hopefully you can see my screen properly here. So thanks for providing me with the opportunity to discuss the work that we've done in the technical working group. So as was mentioned, we do have the different co-chairs of this working group were Brian Bellendorf, who was the executive director for the Hyperledger Foundation, and of course myself, Tracy Kurt. So I've been working in the blockchain space for 6 years now, and I'm currently an associate director of Accenture's Blockchain and Multi-Party Systems Global Architecture team. And the technical working group was made up of people across a number of different parts of the blockchain and DLT ecosystems, from both public permissionless and private permissioned space, as well as implementers of different DLT platforms to implementers of industry applications that are using DLT platforms. So the technical working group's focus was really twofold. The working group was looking at updating the technical standards mapping. So GSMI 2.0 removed 2 of the dormant standard initiatives that were in the GSM 1.0, and we added 5 new standards to our map of technical standards. And of course, as you are aware, and if you look at the report, you will see that the technical standards fall into 3 separate categories. The first is formal standard organizations like ISO and IEEE. The second would be industry groups like Hyperledger Foundation and Interwork Alliance. And the third would be major standard setting efforts like the Ethereum improvement protocols. The GSMI 2.0 technical standards mapping includes now a total of 37 blockchain and distributed ledger standards. And then the second focus that the working group had was really on highlighting different case studies. So the GSMI 2.0 report includes case studies on the ITU telecommunications standardization sector. It includes a case study on the mobility open blockchain initiative, which is MOBI, and then the Interwork Alliance token taxonomy framework. And as we all know, blockchain and DLT standards, both formal and industry-led, are constantly evolving. They remain in a nascent state. And as we look forward to what the next thing might be for GSMI 3.0, the working group has called out additional areas like interoperability, layer 2 protocols, DeFi protocols, decentralized autonomous organizations, and other standard bodies which will emerge as the industry continues to evolve in 2022. In addition to mapping the technical standards, there is development work that's ongoing in areas of standards in blockchain, DLT audit, certification, security, and environmental impact. And we recommend that we explore these in the future as we continue to expand on what we've done so far in the technical working group. So I'm now going to hand the microphone over to Erica Lau, who will discuss some key takeaways from the China ecosystem. And Erica, I'm happy to continue sharing if you just want me to move to the next slide.
Okay, yes, please. Thank you, Tracy, for the introduction. So my name is Erica, and I'm from Red Date Technology. So Red Date Technology, it's a It's an architect firm behind the blockchain-based service network, BSN. So BSN was funded in 2019 as China's blockchain infrastructure project, and it has been growing very fast for the past 2 years, and it's now global. So we're happy to contribute some of our research findings to China's blockchain technical standards currently. So since 2018, when the blockchain industry just starting off, so the Ministry of Industry and Information Technologies has been calling upon on high quality standards for blockchain industry. So as of today, there are many standards appearing in the country today, and as we can see in a table here, so in the national standards, we're having 8 being proposed, and still more are applying. And industry standards, so for example, financial industry, financial sectors, and also software industries, and they all having different standards. And these standards, they are more technical, and they are more focusing on their specific industries. And besides these, a lot of the organizations and institutions are all having their own standards. For example, the Belt and Road Initiative Blockchain Association and China's Trade Association for Anti-Counterfeiting, etc. So all these different standards have different focuses and have a different scopes. But the common consensus today is that we're still lacking of high quality standards. So this year, actually, so Tracy, next, please. So this year, actually, the National Blockchain DOT Technical Standardization Committee was established. So we all know that standards plays a very important role in the mass adoption for blockchain technologies. So the Standardization Committee really stepped their foot in and starting to formulating, how to come up with high quality national standards for China. So next year, we're actually going to see a lot of the pilot projects based on the new projects and a lot of the promotions for this new standards as well. But blockchain in general is still in very early stage, as we believe in China. Even China has been have a lot of policy incentives, and the national wide they're taking blockchain as a national strategy for the country. But in the standardization area, I think we still have a long way to go. And it's a very good starting point that we finally have something that's on a national level, and really trying to put the efforts in a lot of these standardization works. So we'll see the standardization continues to mature as the blockchain industry evolves. I think that's about our findings here. Yeah, so I'll hand back to you, Tracy.
All right, thank you. I think we'll hand it back then to Sophia.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that overview of the technical working group. I'm glad we also had an opportunity to include the China perspective. Arnaud, I'll hand things over to you. Arnaud is the Sustainability Transformation Lead at CETA, and he's going to discuss digital identity, a core piece of many of the applications discussed throughout the GSMI. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me well? All right. So yeah, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. So my name is Arnaud Broly. I'm based in Singapore, and I'm really glad to be here today and to provide you some of the outcome of what we've developed during this working group. So I was co-chairing the Digital ID working group, and with my colleague, James Loperfido, and I would like as well to really thank the GBBC guys, Sierra Lewis, Riyad Carey, because they were super helpful along the 15 individual and companies who help us to develop this analysis for today. So digital identity, yeah. We think that it's absolutely necessary to review where we are on the digital identity. And for the simple reason that internet today is broken. So the way that internet has evolved without any reliable way to authenticate, to verify identity, and all of our personal information are more or less scattered among different databases and being constantly monitored with the risk of being stolen and everything. So cyber identity, cyber security, which is supposed to be an infrastructure to really safe and make sure that the transfer of all of our digital data is as well a bit at risk when it's about personal informations. And just to provide you a couple of stats, so the PII, personal identifiable information, represent around 97% of all breaches in 2018. So there is a real problem here. And since 2017, there is around 600 million of personal details which have been hacked, leaked, and breached from various organizations. This is one of the other factors why we need to rethink digital identity. But beside, and if we look at what the World Bank reports about identity, so there is more than 1 billion of people on Earth which are excluded from accessing basic services due to their inability to prove their identity. Most of the reasons what lack of proper infrastructure from government, countries to registered births and other life events. So digital identity in that case could help as well. So there is some other factors where it's important to rethink digital identity. So one of the things is a move towards the Web 3.0, which is a decentralized network. As I just mentioned, so the current internet model has some problem. And today it's largely relies on centralized servers and protocol, which could of course occur a central point of failure. And the rise of the Web 3.0 is really based on a non-centralized authority to oversee the development of this new and open internet and leveraging blockchain and distributed ledger technology to resolve some of the underlying issues from the Web 2.0, including the way to authenticate ourselves. So last but not least, and again, among some others, the reason why we need to rethink digital identity. And unfortunately, acceleration of digital identity was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we'll see later that it impacts various areas such as the healthcare, travel, and government immigration. So that's where we see that there is a need for a foundational, global, interoperable framework for modern digital identity. But digital identity, usually decentralized identity solutions, sometimes as well referred as a self-serving identity or SSI framework. So what it is, just to spend 1 second on it. So it's really a model for managing digital identities. So providing to individual or things or assets, but a lifetime and portable and immutable identity to everything. So organization, person, and things, as I said. So it should not depend to any centralized authority or brokers, even if SSI doesn't mean to replace the trust for government. But SSI, so self-serving identity, is really a model which aims at resolving the trust issues that comes with identity management. So leveraging blockchain to provide this traceability and immutability, and this concept of DID, so decentralized ID, which is a new type of identifier for verifiable and useful for purpose of authentication. So in a way, in this little diagram, so when you will receive kind of certificates from an issuer, it could materialize, for example, in your mobile phone as in fact with a QR code with some key information, including some private crypto keys. And in a blockchain, you will have a decentralized IDs with a public key, and all the verification mechanism to build this trust is then playing this and proving that who you are, and you can disclose only the information you want to disclose, and not all the sets as it is today. So decentralized identity solution, what we realize is really gaining a lot of momentum. A lot of application examples at government level, healthcare, finance, trade, and physical interaction, and we'll see that later on the next slides. But as part of GSMI, so if we take a look at the standards and interoperability, the key outcome is that so far there is no unified and overall standards to define precisely how digital ID mechanism, so from the issuance to verification, should work. So there is various technology firms, and they have their own way to implement these standard specifications and which limit interoperability. And this is one of the key findings. So you see a couple of logos here about standards, consortium, and foundations that are working on various technology stack used in digital ID. So such as the W3Cs, the World Wide Web Consortium, which initially you might know because they built up the web standard in the early 2000s and are really involved in working group to specify architecture, data model, and representation of decentralized IDs. JSON, very famous for developers. The JavaScript object notations, which is an open standard file format, and it's somehow used for QR code representation. You might be familiar with. There is some other entities such as the GIF, the Decentralized Identity Foundation, which is an engineering-driven organization. So they create and maintain an interoperable open ecosystem for the decentralized identity stack, trust over IP as well, hosted by the Linux Foundation, and they define architecture for internet scale digital trust. And one I would like to mention specifically the Selfserving Foundation, which is a non-for-profit entity, and they're using decentralized identifier technology. So in order to, on the sovereign networks, to allow the digital credential to be privately used, controlled, and managed and shared. So just to name a few in terms of standard and tentative for interoperabilities. So for sake of time, I will just mention two main verticals and one which was pretty much under the spotlight. How digital identity, self-sovereign identity was largely used. And one, as I said at the beginning, that was driven mostly by the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a kind of accelerator for digital IDs. Just some numbers. Right now in the travel industries, so this COVID has really been a very, I would say, badly impacted the travel sectors. So the aviation industry lost around $95 billion in cash this year, without the impact of the previous years. The tourism, the international visitors who are, not really in use now, it estimates a loss between $900 billion to $1.2 trillion by the fact that no tourism can travel right now. So the problem here is trust. The trust among governments. How a government can be sure that the tourists coming in are as per of their criteria compliant to their safety, regulation, immigration, and so on. So the governments are requiring some testing or vaccination proof as a condition for international trade. And that's, I guess, still the case today. So there is a lot of initiatives which have been put in place, a lot of from the private sector. And again, just to name a few about those different initiatives, you have the Common Project Foundation and the World Economic Forum, who developed a Common Pass, a traveler app, to store and display your COVID-19 results. IATA as well, Travel Pass, has developed this mobile app to store and manage certification for your COVID-19 test or vaccines. ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, developed as well a similar I would say, OK Pass mobile app. But we have as well the World Health Organization, who developed a digitally enhanced international certificate of vaccination called the Smart Yellow Card, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of initiatives from the private sectors, which today are still under development with the problem of interoperability, as we would see. So at government level and international interoperability, so the trend and the driver for the adoption of digital identity is mostly by the expansion of the regulatory framework for data privacy. So in Europe, we have the famous GDPR, we have as well the CCPA. Brazil recently as well developed the LGPA. So it's all about the incentivization to manage personally identified information through the use of verifiable credential and digital identities. And the different government initiative as well to use digital identity to make it quicker and easier for their people to verify themselves, their identity, and to create a process as trusted as a passport, bank statement for various government services. So to conclude on some of the outcomes that we found out with the working group. So in the world of and the space of digital identity, so there is a very high level of fragmentation. No standards ready for wide adoption yet, without talking about the country level standard and schema for digital identities. So interoperability is a must for sure. And by enabling digital identity verification across all sectors, that would be a great step forward in order to cross the different area and reusable digital identity for both government and private sector. And we are not there yet. And one of the, I would say, outcome is that we do believe that open standards and technologies could enhance these adoptions. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you. And over to you, Sophia.
Thanks so much, Arnaud. We had a number of questions come in during your remarks, and I think some of them are specific to you. So if you'd like, you can type in your answer there, or we can address them at the end as well. Last but certainly not least, I would like to hand the mic over to Paul Rapino. He's Chief Growth Officer at GBBC and also a leader at the Interwork Alliance, an initiative of the GBBC, which he'll discuss in more detail as he walks us through the Green Economy Working Group. Thanks so much, Paul.
All right, thanks again, Sophia. Thanks all our panelists for an overview of several months of hard work. Getting people on the same page, getting aligned, defining a problem is hard to do, but once you do, you have the minds in place to drill in. So I'm gonna end this with just a quick overview of our section, and we are the green economy. So in the report, we can just go down to the table of contents, and then we'll go into the green economy. So when we put this group together, I was very new to the whole idea of what green really was. I mean, I obviously had an overview of what I can do as an individual or with my family, but from a business point of view, what I really wanted the group to focus on as we talked about it and we got agreement was, let's have a level 100 executive overview so that any person who wants to understand green can kind of get an understanding of the market. I'll walk you through the topics in just a second. But the real end game was, how do we make green quantifiable? If blockchain is really going to drive business success or transform how business is done, we've got to be able to quantify that. We also wanted to break through myth versus reality. And then we wanted to show how emerging technologies, including blockchain, can actually solve that. Coming to just a basic definition of what the green economy is, we wanted to simplify that. So we took several different versions of it and simplified it by basically saying the green economy is low carbon, resource efficient, and then socially inclusive. And it was great to have thinkers from all over the globe, from Fortune 100 companies to startups that are in the middle of revolutionizing what's going to happen at the grassroots level. But as they come together, we're going to continue to see success. So in the paper, it's about 8 pages long or so. You'll look at getting a good definition. So again, if you're asked by your company or you're doing some basic research, this is a good overview of the writing that's out there, the thinking that's out there from the International Chamber of Commerce, from the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and we looked at climate change, resource saving managers, the different topics we looked at. What we really wanted to spend time with, and as you look at anything with tokenization or in a digital ecosystem, is really understanding that ecosystem. So the green marketplace is a good overview to get an idea of the supply side and the demand side. Once you start understanding who those players are or where you fit in that equation, it helps you start to understand what the problem is and also where the solutions potentially lie. The next thing we look at is, who are the actual players? Like, what are the roles and responsibilities? Because everyone has a piece of the action. Everyone right now, many people are trying to solve this problem. Most corporations have it in their vision statement that they're going to have an environmental outreach program or transformation program. So we talked about the governments, the institutions, financiers, the standards organizations are big, registries are a really big middleman, verifiers and auditors. So this outlines the problem or the actual touch points in that ecosystem. And then how technology and employees can actually make a difference in the space. There's also 2 significant marketplaces that you need to think about, or at least look into as you explore this problem. One is voluntary and one is mandatory. Obviously, voluntary are corporations who are looking at the space and saying, what can we do to solve the problem? The corporations are aligning to the Paris Accord that came out several years ago, as countries agreed at that Paris Accord that they were going to reduce emissions, and then they put metrics in place and guidelines, and they signed the document. So the companies and the countries are vested in trying to solve this problem to reduce their carbon footprint. In order to do that, there's not enough opportunity out there to offset their carbon footprint. So what they're doing is working on technical solutions that can verify via technology what that ecosystem is, what the supply side is, and what the demand side is, and through versions of tokenization, validate it on blockchain or DLT technology, and actually make an impact. The paper then goes on. We talk about both the markets. We talk about the different jurisdictions and what's happening in that space. And probably the big takeaway is it's not easy to be green. One of the things we looked at is what are the challenges in the space. And as we look at GSMI 3.0, and we get more and more companies through GBBC and our Interwork Alliance and other third parties, consortia looking at this problem, we're looking ahead to 2003 on real practical ways to start solving some of these problems as the technology takes a step forward. Finally, in the paper, we do a use case, and we talk about how blockchain was actually used to validate the early stages of laying out the taxonomy. Once you lay out a taxonomy of what the words mean, what the phrases mean, and people are on the same page, then they can start getting agreement on what those solutions might be. So a company could come to the table. Within this paper, we lay out a tokenization framework, and the framework can be used in an open source way so that any company in an ecosystem can get their partners aligned on the basis of what tokenization standards are required to simplify the process. And then finally, at the end, if you're needing a quick read, we make recommendations. There's a reading list. If you are on point to solve or address some of your sustainability goals, or you're talking to a partner, these are the most important areas. Obviously, you want to understand COP26, the Paris Agreement, and some of the other position papers that are out in the market. This will give you a quick overview of what's out there. Some go pretty deep. But I think if you read the paper, you'll find a quick synopsis. It'll give you, I don't want to say an elevator pitch, but enough talking points so you can point yourself or your team in the right direction. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We talk about the different strategies for your sustainability goals and just the basics of understanding the terminology around what sustainability actually means for your company, for your partners, and how to move forward. So this is a lot of fun working on it. I hope you get a chance to spend some time through the paper, break it down in digestible pieces. But thank you again for listening.
Thanks so much. With a few minutes left, I'd like to just pose a general question to our participants. And the question that someone asked is, who is the primary audience for the GSMI? Maybe you can speak to who the primary audience is for your working groups, who you hope will read it, and who would get value from it. So to whomever would like to take the question. Arnaud, please go ahead.
Wow, I'm the icebreaker. No, I think for all the, I would say, the different companies who are developing, because again, I will talk for digital identities, it's very complicated to understand all of those standards who keep changing, who keep evolving. And with the interoperability issue, I mentioned about the travel industry. So if you imagine an airport, when you have 100 of people coming, 50 would have different wallet, another one would have different health pass, and so on and so forth. So I think getting this mapping, this global understanding about what's happening in the industry in terms of standard development, and follow very carefully the organization who try to harmonize and create interoperability would be very important for the success of your own development, to not go in a dead end where the industry is going to somewhere else. So I think, yeah, it's pretty much more a solution developer, government to understand what's happening, and yeah, and anyone interested in the travel industry.
Yeah, I would build on that. It depends. I mean, it's a broad paper, so it's not going to be one audience. The green, we focused really on level 100, business executive who wants to get a basic understanding. But if you read through the appendix, depending on your level of expertise, we pulled together, I forgot the number, what we said was it 200 some companies, 190 companies, with a broad view. We can go really deep on a lot of the verticals to give you depth, but also with the appendix and the end notes, you can go as deep as you want and really be pointed in the right direction. But again, with the executive summary and the introductions, you can also simplify it top line as well.
Yeah, I think for me, our paper is quite broad as well. But if you come from traditional finance and you're already very familiar with derivatives, you can probably skip the introduction to derivatives, but go straight into the crypto section. And it's actually really interesting to read how the crypto space is different from what you're probably used to in traditional finance. But similarly, for people that are already crypto native, but don't really know much about derivatives and want to know more about how does it actually work, what is it, what is the history. Actually, the introduction to derivatives in general is also very valuable to read.
I would say from the technical working group, it really is people who might be implementing different DLT or blockchain, either platforms or industry type solutions, and understanding what standards might already exist out there, the ecosystems around the different industries that participate already, and understanding what they're doing specifically. If it's a particular platform, understanding the different sorts of specifications that might be coming into play, or things that you can learn about specifically on those particular platforms.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Excellent. I just want to leave us with a final note that while we heard from many of the working groups here, this is not a complete overview of everything covered in the GSMI. So take a look. One of the great places to start is taxonomy. There's actually a great set of definitions compiled by the GBBC and the working group co-chairs there. So if you're just getting into the space, start there. It'll prep you for the report, and then you can dive in. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us today, and to all of you for your excellent work. We look forward to working on GSMI 3.0. I think there's much to do and much remains to be done. So for anyone tuning in, you can contact us at gsmi2021@gbbcouncil.org. We'll circulate that email to everyone who registered as well. So thank you. For those of you that it's morning, have a great rest of your day. And for those of you that it's evening, good night.
Yeah, thank you very much for your
Thanks very much.
presentation. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.